Welcome to Voices in the Wilderness, conversations about church and leader health. Thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to keep the conversation going. Voices in the Wilderness is brought to you by Preparing for Amazement Ministries, where we empower and equip churches and leaders to create lasting and transformational health. Visit amazed15.org to learn more. We also welcome any comments or suggestions. Simply email us at podcast@amazed15.org. My name is Marcus Carlson, and today my guests are Jen Bidford and Joe Oliver. Welcome, Jen and Joe.
Hey.
Thanks.
That's a lot of J words, my tongue could get tied there. And what we've been doing, we've been recording episodes in a new kind of 10-part series on habits of healthy leaders. And so this is our third episode for that. And today we're going to talk about, why do we even talk about habits? We've done some stuff on habits of healthy churches. We've done some stuff on habits of healthy leaders. You both are leading and have led in different spaces, especially faith-based spaces, and probably have seen and learned a few things about that. So excited to kind of have a conversation about that.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in. So for each of you, why do you think habits are so essential for people who are leaders? Both in general and maybe even as we think about leaders of faith.
What comes to mind for me? Okay, what comes to mind for me is that we are always being shaped and formed by something. And so our habits actually, whether we recognize that they are shaping and forming us, and we are becoming something through our habits as one of the things that shape us without intentionality, we're being discipled, using a faith-based word, into whatever the trajectory is of those habits, whether they're healthy or unhealthy.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I think they're essential because I think habits make things easier or worse. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if you've ever driven on a dirt road in the mountains and you have those tire ruts that sit on your left and right, and then you have the mound in the middle, those ruts that exist. Charles Duhigg, in a book called The Power of Habit, talked about how habit forming in our brains creates like ruts. That those habits, we get into these ruts essentially, and like a vehicle driving on a dirt road, that you get in the rut, you got to really crank your wheel to get up and out of the rut. And so when you have bad habits, you're in a rut. And it's hard to come out of that rut, right? You really got to work and to create new ruts, new habits in your life. And on the other side of that, when you have good habits in your life, again, you're creating ruts in your brain that actually make it easier to move forward. So I think habits make things easier if they're the right kind of habits. They'll also make things very much harder if they're the wrong kind of habits, because habits are pattern forming, and so I think they're essential. If you want to be a healthy leader, you got to create the right habits in order that you can actually make things easier for yourself. That's my 2 cents. I don't know.
No, that makes sense. I love the image of ruts. And of course, everyone in the world knows it's easy to pick up or restart a bad habit. It's hard to kick a bad habit. It's much harder to pick up a good habit or, keep it. And even some of the recent research that I've read on this, just the recognition that in our lives, habits actually have more power than our thoughts, beliefs, and intentions. And and it's this kind of reactive thing. So we think we're these theological creatures or these philosophical creatures, that have control over mind and body, but we basically live one habitual reaction to another. And so I think that's and I think for Christians it's hard to hear that habits have more power than our thoughts, beliefs, or intentions, because that feels like that bumps with the scripture, but it's actually very much in line with kind of this sinful nature and pride being, the root of all sin. But I think that can be hard to hear.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and
No,
to just
I think
add to
that's,
that, when you were talking about habits leading into patterns, the trajectory of what the outcome is, it's either life-giving or it brings death. And so when you were using language of easy or hard, it's like, to me, I think of it in terms of life and death. Like, are you bringing it? So for example, it's not always easy to lean into the healthy way, but if the goal is health and wholeness and working well in a life-giving way, say relationally, I'm going to lean into relational repair to bring greater life, even though it's a challenging path forward. But a habit of not doing that actually grows a lot of unhealth in a culture, say for example of a staff at a church or even within the congregation. And so a trajectory of, say, conflict avoidance as a habit, those little habits add up into trajectories. And for a group of people, that becomes a culture over time. And it's shaped and formed whether you're paying attention to it or not. It just happens.
and habits are really hard to change. And so if that's a culture you've created, boy, the work to undo that culture and create a new habit, again, it's like you got to go out, because those ruts are created over years and years and years of people driving in the same way. To actually create a new rut takes lots of work of intentionally making a decision to come out of the rut and drive in a different way to create a um, new pattern of behavior in life. Yeah, so it's really hard.
And I think a couple churches I've worked with, really over the last several years, one of the things I've seen is kind of you fix the culture, you get the culture healthier, but certain things will happen, and you see that kind of not as bad, not as intense, right? Regression. And I remember being frustrated about that one time, and a business leader said to me, "It's a muscle memory problem." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that those habits kind of create that muscle memory. And so even when you get out of that, right, like if you go to the gym 3 times a week and do certain things, and then you stop for 6 months and you go back to the gym, it's fairly unpleasant you know
Yeah.
and so I think that muscle memory thing is an interesting thing. But so for you all, like for the two of you, what are some habits that have kind of shaped your leadership and your life, as much as you're willing to share, good or bad?
Go for it, Joe.
Oh boy. Habits that have shaped me. You know, Unfortunately, I probably have more bad habits that I've had to work on as I've grown in my Christian faith and my maturity. That, when I was in my 20s, I thought I was unstoppable and could do anything. And now that I'm in, creeping up on 50, it's like, um, boy, breaking some really bad habits is has been hard to do. It's been worth the work, but it's been hard to do. Um, some habits that have really shaped me is, things like, always trying to be curious.
Mm,
And I tend to want to know the answer and be able to speak to the answer with certainty and clarity. And oftentimes when I do talk, I can speak so directly that it sounds like I know what I'm talking about when I'm actually just thinking out loud. I'm like mental dumping on someone, and it comes across like certainty, but it's like, no, I'm just like letting out what's in this brain. But the habit of like staying curious with people, staying curious with myself, what is God saying to me today? There's a habit I've been doing for many, many years now is when I get up and I start my day, I say the Lord's Prayer. And because that centers me, that's a centering thing for me, to center me into to Jesus. And then I say, my prayer is essentially, I know we're going to talk about prayer in another episode, but then I just pray, God, What are you up today? What are you up to today? And help me to have eyes to see it.
Mm.
And so that's that curiosity point. That's a habit I have every day where I just say, and it's sometimes out loud, sometimes myself, and I just say, God, okay, what are you up to today? And how can I have eyes to see it so I can help? And that has been, that has shaped me in the sense, just because I'm always, I don't know, just trying to hear what God's up to. And it's helped me be a part of conversations that I never thought I'd be a part of, or be a part of people's lives that I never thought I'd get to be a part of, just because I'm always watching, trying to be curious on what God's up to and figuring out ways to partner with Him in it. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for. That's something that's shaped me, though.
Awesome. No, the answer I was looking for was the one that, you wanted to share. So like, there's no right or wrong in this, I don't think. So yeah.
Yeah, so for me, one of the habits that we'll go with the unhealthy habits. So I even have them listed right here above my office, like right above where I see them. They're like being mindful of values that I have that if they're turned up too high, like efficiency or honesty, that I can plow that I can plow through relationships, which is actually relational connection is one of my deepest actual values that brings life. And so one of the healthy habits, because like what Joe was saying about ruts, you have to actually unlearn before you can relearn. And you literally, what's happening in your brain is you're rewiring your brain towards a new path. It's like when you're sledding. This is another analogy that I've heard, that it's almost like you have to pick up your sled and move it to a different path and just start a new way. And so I have been giving myself permission to just notice what's happening, because so say for example with relational connection, I'm starting to notice what's happening in my body when people are saying things to me that are
Mm.
making me feel devalued, for example. And one of my old habits that I've had to unlearn is allowing like a negative narrative over here take over and use that same imagination to come over here. Okay, well what are other creative narratives that could be happening? And this even happened today.
Mm.
So it's unlearning unhealthy just ways of thinking is, so it's like unlearning to relearn a new healthier way to even function within my own mind. And yeah, just because I think something doesn't mean I need to say it out loud or discern something, as you've taught me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. Like when you're a discerner, I mean, it took me a long time to like figure out that didn't mean I had to say or do something about it. And even now, like there's we're throwing around a bunch of analogies. Like there's no way to bat 1,000. Like you're just not gonna bat 1,000 on this. And I think that's the hardest part about habits sometimes, right? That you'll have 5 really good days and 1 really bad day, and it you know it feels like it undoes all of that, right? And there's no way that we're going to get through all of this, and I think and perfect it. And I think that's part of the challenge, I think, for me. um you know I and I think there's certain things that I live by a to-do list and I live by a calendar. It's just the nature of my life and my personality. And there's just certain things that don't go on the to-do list because they're ingrained in my life, and some of them are really good, like showering and brushing your teeth. Like, I don't need to put that on the to-do list. I know if I've not done them, and sometimes so do other people, right? And but I think for other people, for other things, it's like, okay, well, when I feel hurt by this person, I always react this way, right?
Right.
And starting to kind of notice some of those, like, all right, this is triggering from something from a long time ago, or this word you know makes me always feel this. And so a lot of times I think it's it's one of the situations where you don't think about your reaction, you think about how the other person kind of caused it, right? It's that fundamental attribution bias or whatever they call it, or fundamental attribution error, right? That if we make a mistake, we're a victim of our circumstances. If we fail or whatever, if somebody else does, it's a character flaw, right? That again, we kind of judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions, and so I think that plays around with habits, as well. But and you guys talked about this a little bit already, but curious of any other thoughts, like what today, like we've talked about current and previous habits, but like what role, like overall, would you say habits play in your health as a leader currently? You're both kind of in different seasons of leadership and life, so I'm curious how that is.
Yeah, I've had to grow into learning how to rest well.
Mm,
And for me, um, taking days off is not helpful. And I know that like practicing Sabbath is is something I'm getting better at. But I'll tell you one thing I have improved in my habit is I've learned to take incremental rest
mm,
breaks, and where I'll take a break, and I have the luxury and where I'm at in life right now to do that. That's not always the case, and I understand that not everybody can do this, but you're asking what I'm doing right now that's contributing my health. I don't rest well. And instead of just saying, Joe, you just need to take a day off. Okay, well, you can say that, but my brain's not going to shut off. You can take everything away. You can't stop my brain from thinking about the million things I want to think about. So, how can I rest well? For me, I've learned to start by taking incremental breaks where I can stop. And what I'll do is I'll go on a walk. I'll go outside and look at my yard for 10 minutes. Like I'll, I'll pick up a video game and play it for 20 minutes, play MLB The Show and just, mindless stuff, that helps me break, and then I'm done, and then I'm just engaged right back into it. And so that's something that's helped me in my health currently, because if I don't slow down or stop, um, it doesn't bode well on the people I care about most. So
awesome. Thank you.
that's something I do currently.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, and for me, it's for the first time in my life, I have started giving myself permission to be somebody who has needs, and that's also okay because I mean, you both know me very well, and you're both laughing. That one of the things I've learned about myself that I am also unlearning is that I overfunction, and I think it's comes from all kinds of reasons. But I too am a very high capacity person, like both of you. Um, and so just learning what those things are that are life giving for me or sources of energy and strength. And it could be the sunshine. Like I have to be in the sunshine. So much so that I'll open this window down in the middle of February so that the sun is directly on my face, even though it's cold. So I know that about myself. I also know that I have to be around my people who see who I am, the beauty of who I am, and are just like a breath of fresh air or like a cool glass of water when I'm with them, just by like both of you are those people. Like I could have a phone conversation with you and my whole body settles. Like I need to be constantly engaging throughout the week with my people. So knowing who my team is that's around me. And also another habit that has completely changed me is listening prayer. And again, we'll get into that later, but to just sit and listen and not always be yapping at. But, and then, like I said, being mindful of what my needs are, like Joe was saying, they change over time, given what seasons of life we have. And back to in February, I'm not going to be able to do this new weird habit that I've started, which y'all are about to laugh, but I go on barefoot walks in the neighbors' yards with my dog, and I'll just walk barefoot because I know that if I'm getting dysregulated, if I stand in grass, it actually calms your body. And so Yeah, I'm the weirdo who either has roller skates on in our neighborhood or is walking barefoot with my dog through your yard. So
I have
luckily people see
questions. I have
the
questions.
yeah,
Most
yes.
importantly, I want to know how the
Anyway,
neighbors feel about this, you know. Do they
no one
lock their
said
do they
anything.
deadbolt their doors, or, or
It's
they're
not
going to
like
start to
fill
appear
their
these
yard. It's
keep
at the
off the
edge of.
grass signs, you
Well,
know.
I avoid those.
Oh,
I
okay.
avoid those. The church across the street has the nicest grass in the
Well,
neighborhood
there you
or the
go.
park.
And yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Churches are so friendly, so I'm sure that that will work just fine. But yeah, I think
Anyway,
I think one thing I would just say about this, before we kind of wrap up is, I do think that concept of seasons is important. What would I say to this conversation or this question? I'd say I'm actually having to refigure that out. Not because like the habits I have right now are good or bad. They're just not, they don't match the season, right? We now have both kids in college. And so we're in this pseudo empty nest. I say pseudo because they come home for breaks and things like that. But we're in this pseudo empty nest season, and it's just a whole different ballgame in terms of what our day looks like. And so it's it's kind of scary and fun at the same time to go, okay, like we gotta I gotta figure out what this looks like. And so that's I think that's the hard thing. Like I think we're creatures of comfort and routine. So, ruts or not, right? Good or bad habits, when external forces force us to change our habits, I think that's even worse than when we're just trying to change them on our own.
Mm.
And at least for me, that's my personality, I suppose. But it's a fascinating thing, for sure. Well,
cool.
appreciate both of you sharing, and excited we're going to do some of these together, and we're going to next time we're going to kind of dive in to the actual habits and walk through kind of what we've identified as seven of the, not all of the, but seven of the top habits of healthy leaders. So appreciate you joining us in this.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to keep the conversation going. Voices in the Wilderness is brought to you by Preparing for Amazement Ministries, where we empower and equip churches and leaders to create lasting and transformational health. Visit amazed15.org to learn more. We always welcome any comments or suggestions. Simply email us at podcast@amazed15.org. And especially as we do this series of 10 episodes on leader health, we're working on the material, the book on the same subject. So we would love your feedback as you can play a part in shaping that information.